And so these games are purpose-built to drive playership, but also viewership. Influencers that are coming to our event who are all dressed up in different outfits that represent their heroes within the game.
Hi everyone, and today we are talking about esports. And we are talking about esports with someone that knows quite something about it, and that is Alyson Walker. She's not very close to where I am. She's, I think, in Canada. Hi, Alyson. Tell me about a bit yourself, where you are, OverActive Media, and I know you're into something these days, correct?
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure and nice to be working together again after so many years. Well, let's start with who I am to set the context. I would call myself an athlete turned business executive with a growth mindset and a passion for achieving big things with great people. That probably describes me very well.
Wow.
I've been afforded great opportunities to work, as I said, with incredible people in global leading organizations, and mostly those that sort of think big and want to create new things and work hard to get there. And I think that's a good sort of foundation to set for this conversation. My career path has taken me from high-end travel to investment banking and then into media, sports media and entertainment, which is where we first met. Today, as you said, I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at OverActive Media. We're a global esports organization with franchise teams in the largest esports leagues in the world. I'm literally today next door to our venue where we're hosting the Overwatch League Grand Finals right here in Toronto with a sold-out crowd this weekend. So we're pretty excited about all of that. And so that's probably a good way to start, who I am and why I'm here talking to you today.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for context, we started working together in 2010 for the 2011 Winter Olympics with CTV. So it was quite a fun run into the Olympics, and we did quite some amazing numbers for those days in terms of concurrent. Guess when Canada was playing hockey, obviously, with the US.
Exactly.
So esports, I think, is mildly understood by people, but can you do a masterclass in 3 minutes about the esport ecosystem? Because it's a bit different from normal sport, and you need to understand the gaming, the game. So it's a bit different.
It's a bit different.
Please.
For sure. Well, I will say that you did a very good job of summarizing the esports ecosystem and landscape in your piece. So I'll push people towards that. I'm sure it'll be on your site. So esports really is competitive gaming. And as everybody that probably listens to your podcast would understand, this is a new time and new generations come up after us. And the consumption of content certainly has shifted to bite-sized online and in-person content consumption. And we really are in this attention economy right now. We, a bunch of folks that come from both sort of the venture capital world and sports media and entertainment came together about 5 years ago and saw an opportunity in the esports space. This is specific to OverActive Media, where the advent of players coming together, playing team games against each other with audiences for prize money really took off and became a phenomenon. With that, at the same time, the couple of the largest publishers, in our case, Activision Blizzard and Riot Games, created franchise leagues, really mirroring the success that traditional sports has had with the franchise league model, which is at the global level. So the leagues themselves sell global sponsorships, media rights, merchandise. They generate revenue for the entirety of the enterprise, and they sell franchises to local owners who then have the opportunity to grow and monetize locally and take advantage of a revenue share at the league level. We believe in this model. Most of us have worked in it. I have spent time at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment here in Canada. I've also worked at our Olympic Committee, really familiar with the sport ecosystem. And so we as a group bought into this, first with an Overwatch League franchise, then very quickly Call of Duty franchise, We are in the League of Legends European Championship in Europe. So we have actually a Spanish team called Mad Lions in the European LEC, and multiple game titles and players and teams along the way. But those three are certainly the largest by, I would say, viewership and participation and prize money as it pertains to franchise leagues. Not every game in esport necessarily has franchise leagues. And so what's really interesting about the ecosystem is where it does differ a little bit from traditional sports. The publisher of the game certainly hold the purse strings. There's no doubt they own the IP, they develop the games. In some cases, like Call of Duty, these are franchises that have been around. This is a franchise that has been around for 20 plus years. And so these games are purpose built to drive playership, but also viewership. And so the publishers are key partners of ours. Within that ecosystem, you have, of course, the players and the coaches that are critical to this ecosystem. You have team owners like OverActive Media. We are investing in these players, these coaches, the fan base, the ecosystem. You have tournament operators, and typically the operators, the broadcasters. So there are large, successful companies like Face ADSL, Blast Pro, many others that are a big part of the ecosystem. And then, of course, we, as I said, we're hosting an event today. And so we work very closely with our league partner, the broadcast partner that they have chosen. The broadcast belongs to the league. We bring in a production partner and we put on these large events. And so there are multiple players in the ecosystem. And sort of just to wrap this up, because I could go on and on, the business model has been tested and talked about a lot. And I think, Carla, this is partly why you were interested in talking about it. What has remained similar to traditional sports has certainly been this notion of building fandom around team brands. Certainly there's a global aspect to esports, but we're very focused on building localized fandom, which we can then, of course, engage in activations locally. We can, of course, engage our brand partners to invest in our teams, to connect with our fans. So all of that and the growth of both the league and the each franchise, that has been quite similar and on a pretty steep trajectory in a positive way to traditional sports. What has differed, and I'm sure we'll talk about challenges, is this media rights piece of it, where frankly, streaming platforms, where a lot of them are getting into sport, but really in the gaming space, it has been Twitch and YouTube in this sort of head-to-head. And so we've had to think about exclusive deals that bring in money versus building reach. And so it's this trade-off that has been a really interesting part of the evolution of the esports business model, certainly in the franchise league areas. And so that piece isn't the same. There's no doubt about it. And I would say we're still trying to work all of that out. But certainly streamers and influencers have played a big part of that. Again, something you touched on in your piece. And so today, I would tell you that the scale is there, players are there, fans are there. Certainly Gen Z are engaging deeply in this gaming and esports space, and the business model continues to evolve. And we're right at the forefront of it, working closely with the largest publishers in the world and hosting live events. And so it's always exciting to talk about it.
Absolutely. So you mentioned fandom. So I think I want to deep dive a bit on that. Explain, and I understand it. It's a global economy, if you want, in terms of esports. So there may be differences, there may be fragmentation. But describe to us European and not gamers who are part of this fandom. Who are the fans?
Great
Stupid
question.
I think
great
it's
question.
People understand.
When we started, we engaged in a lot of research for this reason. Who are the fans? Who are the core fans? Who are the casual fans? Things that all of my peers in sort of sports media and entertainment are accustomed to looking into. And so a couple of really interesting insights. First of all, the fans of different game titles are different. The general demographics are certainly, Gen Alpha, but Gen Z is a core, millennials, a number of people my age played games and now have children, so they're very engaged. But really that Gen Z demographic is pretty consistent. And Gen Z and millennial demographic is consistent. But different game titles have different fans. And that makes sense if you think about it. I'll use games that we play in. So Call of Duty and Overwatch as two comparisons, two of our franchises based here in Toronto. Call of Duty is very much of, as is talked about, it's a very mass market, pop culture, bro culture game. Huge overlap with sports. Many professional sport athletes play Call of Duty. We've had collaborations and investment from our Toronto Maple Leafs players. Many we've done from a live event standpoint, white label standpoint. We've worked with the Green Bay Packers because their football players play Call of Duty. It's very mass market, and our fans overlap deeply with, for example, our Toronto Raptors here in the same city, similar fan base. And so you can imagine we use our experience and our know-how from working closely with those sorts of traditional sports to reach our Call of Duty fan base. The Overwatch fan base is quite different, and it overlaps from a casual fan base, but the core fan is very much more focused on the loyalty around fantasy and the lore around cosplay. And we have so many amazing influencers that are coming to our event who are all dressed up in different outfits that represent their heroes within the game. And so a really different fan base, more families, frankly, parents and kids. In fact, it's a harder game to play and understand, but just a different fan base that are looking for a little bit of different type of entertainment. So that's just one example of differences in fan base. But certainly what we're trying to do, like many organizations, is cater to our core fan, make sure that we have ways to keep them loyal, and we're rewarding them with their day-to-day investment in us. This is, we are always on content, always on social, engaging our fans outside of when we host live events. That's a real focus, but also we talk a lot about the intersection of sports, lifestyle, music, pop culture, and how do we engage that casual fan that is literally focused on being entertained and doing things that are interesting. And that's a really interesting part of what we do that's a little bit different than the strategy around reaching the core fan.
Yeah. One question I would have is, how many of these fans are not playing the games they're watching?
Great question. We do have that research, but anecdotally, I would tell you that, it depends on the game. With Call of Duty, it's an easier, more mass market game to understand. They've got COD Mobile as well. So you have a lot of casual fans. Everybody knows what Call of Duty is. A game that's slightly more complicated, Overwatch League of Legends, harder to understand as a casual fan. So I would say the core fans certainly are those that play. And the casual fans are probably friends of theirs or gamers that are interested in the community because it's so large and so engaged. So it's a really good question.
And in terms of women?
Well, that's also a really good question. I, for those that would follow my career, you would see that I focus a lot on giving my time to the advancement of women in sports, particularly on the business side, but certainly I have a lot of friends who are focused on women athletes or players in this case. And so there are two answers to that question. There are the fandom skews a little bit male. Typically, again, these are very anecdotal numbers, but typically sort of 60-40 male, female from a fan viewership standpoint. But unfortunately, at this point, at the pro levels, the players themselves are typically males, not in every case. And the larger publishers are creating opportunity. The Riot Games has something called Game Changers in Valorant, and they'll be coming out with a League of Legends version that really is about advancing women's pro teams. And so there's a lot of work to do. I've talked about this publicly before. This is a society challenge whereby young women have not been encouraged to be on computers playing games. It's the same sort of STEM challenge we face. And there is toxicity online, and we see that across the board in social media. So all of society's problems online certainly transcend themselves into gaming and esports. And so you find a lot of women self-select themselves out of playing competitive games because it's hard. And so we have different initiatives we're working on, and the leagues are doing the same to try and have more women playing. But I would say the fan base is very healthy. They're there to watch the very best at a game they love to play.
I don't know if you want to start from challenges and opportunities, but maybe give me a sense of what are the current challenges. I think you mentioned, going the media rights route, which is what 80% of money in professional sport comes from there. And, you can choose challenges, opportunities.
Well, it's in my nature to always start with the opportunities. So let's start there.
Good.
Well, we already talked about this. The reality is that Gen Z demographic, young fans and consumers are the future, of course, will have the greatest buying power in the next 10 years and are very coveted by brands and media companies, of course. And so that's the greatest opportunity here, which is our audience is deeply loyal and deeply engaged. And so that's sort of Gen Z demographic, very coveted for sure. I would say scale. There is no denying that people across the world, not just Gen Z, but are engaging in gaming in some sort, of some sort, whether it's Candy Crush on your phone or Minecraft or Call of Duty. It's part of the lexicon of how content is consumed. And so the scale exists. It's, of course, now a matter of how do you engage fans? And when you're a business person, how do you monetize that fan? Generally, consumption habits, as I said. And what I will say that it was very interesting for me, having come into this not as a traditional endemic gamer, community is so important to our fans. The idea that they are part of a community, that find identity within a community. And community is not just online, although it certainly is online, which makes this quite a diverse opportunity because you have online and in-person opportunities. But they all want to come together and see each other in person while they're busy connecting on a day-to-day basis. And this is partly why during COVID, gaming and esports had its moment, because everybody could continue to build community and do the things they were always doing. It's just that all the folks around them didn't understand that while they're busy playing video games, they're actually socializing and building community. And it's actually quite healthy, separate from time spent on screen.
On the community aspect, is not that also, great value for brands that are connecting to you? Because they normally say, we want a community, we don't want an audience, right? I've heard that.
That's exactly it. I was just going to get to that opportunity. Brands are, as I said before, looking to connect with consumers that are at the start of the brand life cycle, that will be consuming their products and services. And it's a very authentic relationship. You have to do it right. But the relationship, and I'll give an example that's really interesting. Here in Canada, one of our largest telecommunications companies is Bell Canada. Bell Media is where Carlo and I met on the Vancouver Olympics. Bell is one of their largest objectives is to sign up every Canadian to be on their internet as an internet service provider. And so they're looking for bottom of the funnel acquisition opportunities to literally convert young people to their internet. With our teams and the loyalty of our fans and gamers, for the first time, I would argue ever, you see online fans and consumers saying, I love Bell 5 internet, it makes me a better gamer. Or thank you so much, Bell 5. The fact that fans are talking about a service that's an internet service that Bell's used to getting complaints about in a positive way, and really admitting to conversion based on the gaming ecosystem, that ability to drive that conversion is really, really important for a company like Bell. And so this engaged community is an authentic community is a really important piece of it. And as I said, the online and in-person piece, people love to watch the very best at what they do. So people always often ask me, are you a gamer? I mean, it's so interesting. And I say, no, haven't been a gamer. I now have an 8-year-old son who is deeply into trying to be a gamer. But you can't deny that people want to watch the very best in the world at what they do. And so those are all the opportunities. The opportunities, I think, are clear to people. The challenges we started to talk about, I mean, And sorry, I'll say one more thing again, because I'm a revenue generator. The revenue opportunity is quite fascinating. We talked about this media rights piece. We've got streamers and influencers, and audiences are there. It's just who's creating the audience and who's driving reach is very interesting. From a revenue standpoint, traditional revenues like sponsorship sales, merchandise, ticket sales, all of those things exist and are critical to the overall picture. The MTX piece is actually fascinating, microtransactions. So in-game skin sales, particularly for a team owner, is a growing opportunity for us, and it drives both fandom. We want people buying our Toronto Ultra Call of Duty skin. We want people interested in our Mad Lions skins, and that is part of the rev share pool now, where as they're sold, we get a piece of that because it's our team, of course. And so huge opportunity there, and it changes, of course, the way we engage with our fans, because we want to make sure they have that opportunity to engage in-game as well. Challenges. From a challenges standpoint, this is not new to anybody, but it costs a lot to own teams and to run an operation. There's no doubt. The old school model of leaning on prize money, and the organization takes a few points and the players get all the prize money, that's not a sustainable model. And we saw that, which is why the franchise league model came to be. It's there's no doubt that cost inflation exists in our world too, particularly as it pertains to paying players. Events and live in-person engagements are also expensive, and they're low margin initiatives. So they're really marketing and fan engagement initiatives that you have to build into your overall business model. We spoke about media rights and streaming platforms. Certainly a challenge. I will say the Amazon Thursday Night Football deal, the MLS Apple deal, those are all very positive steps forward from a live sport on streaming platform perspectives. And so I think the future opportunities there in the future to create competition and media rights certainly exists, and we'll see more to come on that. And then naturally macroeconomics. I mean, we are not immune to what everybody's facing today. Sponsorship sales are softer. Brands are holding tight on investments. Share of wallet from consumers. I mean, we are hosting an event today in downtown Toronto. It's expensive to travel Toronto. It's expensive to get a hotel in Toronto. It's expensive to buy a ticket to an event. And we're competing with preseason Leafs, preseason, there's Toronto Argonauts, there's all the things going on in our market. So it's a constant competition for share of attention and share of wallet, and macroeconomic forces certainly are a challenge right now as we try to take the time we need to grow the esports ecosystem. And so I think all of those challenges are what we talk about on a day-to-day basis, and certainly try to overcome.
And quickly, more specific on the media rights, because so this is my experience, which is, if you want, very, very little. The way the events are produced, I think it's good for it's good for broadcast, right? The problem is, and maybe even for streaming, what is missing? I think there is something missing somewhere. Either is I would say broadcast and streaming companies, which is a bit different, that don't appreciate the value that this can bring to their services, or is it that there's something that these are not built for simple, I'm watching a video, I want interactive. So what is the missing part? That's my reading. I may be wrong.
Yeah. I think that it's a complex question and answer. I don't think it's one thing missing. So what I will say is the quality of broadcast. I encourage you all to go onto YouTube, Overwatch League, and have a look at the broadcast that's currently happening for the Grand Finals. It's a high quality broadcast. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. The way we're producing with the broadcast truck, the graphics, the casters, the analysts, all of it is high quality. So where I think the challenges lie are in no particular order. Number one, even gamers are not necessarily sitting down for an hour and a half to watch a match from start to finish. Just like people are not watching a full Raptors game. So you've got a consumption challenge where, unfortunately, we still have brands and agencies looking to compare average minute audience, total viewership, when really what we should be looking at, it's a metrics issue. We should be looking at total engagement, because the number of people engaging with the Overwatch Grand Finals on socials, through influencers and streamers, the match play itself, all of it is quite substantial, but we're still compared against how many people are watching. I keep coming back to Toronto examples, but a Toronto Maple Leafs full game versus a Boston Uprising full match. And so that's a flaw, because we've already talked about consumption habits, and these folks are not sitting down and watching start to finish. My son will only watch a 5-second clip on YouTube before he's on to the next clip, but he's well aware of the Overwatch Grand Finals. He's just not going to sit and watch. So that's part one. Part two is, as I said before, today it has been an oligopoly in many ways. Twitch already has gamers on its platform. They are not in the business of paying for media rights, particularly in gaming. YouTube, Activision Blizzard did do a public deal that was roughly $150 million early days, about 4 years ago, for the Overwatch and Call of Duty rights. And so we collectively, the league, the teams, the players, were building the YouTube gaming audience through that, but you're giving up the audience that isn't coming over from Twitch. So you gave up reach to take media dollars. And so as an organization that is trying to build leagues in fandom, it's not very smart to give up reach early days. And so then you give up the money for the reach, because everything should be on, should be available. And so this is a bit of a conundrum that we face, and there just isn't enough competition. As I said, today we see deals with Apple and MLS and Amazon. And so there are other streaming platforms that are starting to focus on live sports, but it still needs to come. It needs to build. And so we had a competition issue. We had a consumption issue. And so I would say those two things are a challenge. And then, frankly, I would just say it kind of comes back to people. We, in this case, the leagues themselves, our publishers have been great partners to us, and I have nothing but great things to say about them. However, they are very focused on the publishing of the games and people playing their games and all the things that need to happen there. You need good people focused on selling sponsorships and driving media rights, creating value at the league level and at the team levels. And I think that has come in some ways. I believe that OverActive Media, because we've all got experience, we are value creators. We are thinking bigger. We are always thinking about how do we grow esports in Canada, not just our own teams. That hasn't necessarily been the approach of everybody in esports to date. And so I think the combination of all of those things has led to there's still work to do, but it is an opportunity.
What is your ideal outcome for esport? Where should esport go in 3 to 5 years, if you can decide the future?
Yeah. As I said, it's not going anywhere. It's just a matter of how does fandom continue to grow. Our Mad Lions team, as an anecdote, is right now they just traveled to South Korea for the League of Legends World Championships. This is one of the largest global events, certainly the largest from a franchise team standpoint. Again, I keep making that specific note because there are games that are large that people go and watch competitively, but they're not necessarily team and they're not part of franchise leagues. And so I will continue to say the scale is there, the fandom exists, and now it's creating long-term sustainable business models for everybody involved, the publishers, and by extension, the leagues, the players and coaches, and the team owners that are all investing into this ecosystem. I think that is, so if I could have a sort of magic ball and create a model for the future, it is figuring out all of those pieces and making sure that everybody can sustain themselves, because you can't do it without each of those players. And right now, I would say that the players are doing very well for themselves, as are the coaches. The publishers continue to thrive, and I would say, again, are really driving this forward. So kudos to them. The team owners, the model it needs to continue to evolve. We've probably read a lot about diversifying revenue streams. You've seen esports team owners go from owning teams and being very focused on driving audience around just those teams to either being influencers themselves and buying teams, or buying influencers to be part of them because they have the reach. Is that sustainable? We talk about this every day in our shop because we're more traditional. We're not owned by influencers within the space. And yet influencers come and go. They have their moment in time. They've got hundreds of millions of followers in some case, and then they're no longer relevant. And so it's not necessarily a long-term strategy. And so working together, which we're doing today with our leagues, you'll see and read quite a bit about the Overwatch League. Right now, those of us who lead are leading together to figure out what does the future of Overwatch look like. We still believe in it. It's quite possible that the league as it's currently constituted will change, may even come apart in order to move forward with a new business model that makes sense for everybody. What ends up happening, of course, in the media and with fandom, with fans, is everyone says, oh my God, it's dead, cancel culture, it's never going to make it. When actually a lot of people are thinking hard about how to make it sustainable for long term. And sometimes that means, shutting down what you're doing today to start fresh. And so that you'll see in a little bit of it swirling around this event, because this is the last event of the season for the Overwatch League.
Yeah.
So people are asking questions about the future. And so it's just really important to keep a positive outlook and narrative, just because there is a lot of noise, and to really think about how do we sustain ourselves and the ecosystem, which I really believe in all of the opportunities. So in 3 years, it's sustainable. There's less fluctuating, less sort of negative talk about what's this going to be. Everybody benefits from the ecosystem. And those are all the things we're working on today behind the scenes.
And you don't think, translated to your word, you don't think that Apple doing a deal with someone could accelerate that as it seems is doing with the MLS?
Yeah, well, look, I think the answer is what I said before. We need money in the ecosystem. Of course, we need investment in the ecosystem, but we also need to continue to drive reach. And so that Apple deal would certainly provide us with money in the ecosystem. We need to make sure that simultaneously our audience is going to Apple. And is that the behavior? Is Gen Z, is that where they're watching? It's hard to compare to MLS because, soccer, global sports, different. And now you've got the Messi effect on top of the MLS deal. And so it'll be hard to differentiate between, is it the best global players in the world coming to North America to play? Is it the Apple deal? I mean, I couldn't be happier for MLS in North America, but it's similar, but has its unique differences.
Yeah. And one last question is, I liked working in Canada when it happened in the last many years, and I was there a lot of times. Mm-hmm. How is Canada do? Because everybody talks about but I know Canada has a very well developed sports and media and tech ecosystem. How is, in general, not only esports, what's the vibe in Canada, Toronto in specific?
That's a really interesting question. So I'll answer it in a couple of different ways, and obviously from my perspective, given where I spend my time every day. So starting with esports, we as an organization, right from the beginning, our vision, which is actually shifting, but we came into this to build a global sports media and entertainment company. We said sports intentionally. We wanted to make this broader than the idea of just gaming or just esports. And certainly we went global. So we have operations in Spain and in Germany with the European League of Legends. And here we are in North America with what we've talked about. We are building a performance venue right downtown Toronto that will be the home to our esports teams. It will also be all things performance, a very modular venue, next generation, of course. So that's a really exciting part of what we're doing. But more importantly, we believe it's our responsibility and our desire to build Canada, Toronto first, but Canada into a global hub for esports. And what that means is connecting with people and partnering with those that are also investing in not just the space, but the broader interactive space. There's some really interesting things happening here in Toronto. Through our City Hall friends, there's been an esports consortium created that really brings together private, public, everybody that sort of is focused on gaming and esports in Toronto and more broadly Ontario and Canada. And really with the objective of creating opportunity, creating tourism, creating jobs, building fandom. It's I think a really unique thing that has started, and we're already seeing benefits. We recently brought the Esports Travel Summit to Toronto, which is really global, North American based, but global business leaders interested in the benefits of hosting esports events, bringing gaming to their community. And so the focus on becoming a global hub that transcends the games themselves in esports has really been something that we've been focused on, and we're very proud of the work that we've been doing on that front. So that's esports. There are some great gamers and competitive esports players that have come out of Canada, not necessarily based on our initiatives, but they don't necessarily play on our teams. Our teams, like global leagues, are filled with players from all over the world. But again, I think that there's some of the work we're doing is inspiring those to focus on sort of excellence and becoming the best at what they do. From an overall sports standpoint, this is very personal to me. So as I said at the start, I was an athlete. I really believe in empowering and advancing women, both on the field of play and in the boardroom in sport. There's a lot of movement around the professionalization and the monetization of professional women's sport in Canada and in the US. And I spent a lot of my spare time focused on that. Diana Matheson, who was at the London Olympics, scored the goal that won Canada bronze. She's starting a professional women's soccer league in Canada. We are, against other peers, I would say globally, we are certainly underrepresented from a male and female soccer standpoint. For the first time, you saw our men at the World Cup last year, which was amazing, but not since 1986. So investment at the local level. Our women's teams, we have no sort of feeder system for the women's national team, so they've been successful despite that. So we've got a new professional women's soccer league. The PWHL is a North American hockey league, women's hockey league, that is launching in January, led by some of the Canadians that have been successful on the world stage. And so we had our first WNBA game here in the spring. And so I would say women's sport is finally finding its moment, finding the investment required here in Canada. And you're going to see some really exciting things coming on that front. And we're certainly behind our peers. And so I find that to be extraordinarily exciting.
Good. Thank you, Alyson. It was so fascinating to listen to all the intricacy of esports, but also all the opportunities and all the challenges, unfortunately, still. But I think it has been a fascinating chat. So thank you for enlightening us on esports, which I think is very often not completely understood by the sports and tech media.
Exactly. It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for your interest. We've had an exciting run this past 4 to 5 years, and there's so much more to come. So thank you, Carlo.